Willing and able, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. We have board members, Sarah Finger McDonald and Lahui White Bear and myself attending in the boardroom, and board members Shauna Tomini, Vince Adams attending via audio. Board member Tina Baker apologizes and is excused for emergency reasons. And board member Therese Jones will be joining us shortly during the meeting. With that, I would like to welcome everybody joining us to the board meeting and who are joining us over the YouTube. If you would like to view the agenda and the packet, it will be available on the YouTube description and also on the website of the school board meeting. Welcome everybody. And next item on the agenda is the bond program update.
Well, thank you. So tonight, both Dale Kuykendall and Kim Patton are joining us to provide an update related to what's been going on over the summer with all of our school construction. So thank you for being here, Dale and Kim, and all the work that's gone into those projects over the last several years, but more importantly, over the last several months as we've gotten up and ready for school.
Thank you for having us. Kim, do you have the PowerPoint to share?
Okay. Good evening, folks. Getting quite an echo. Okay, let's try again here.
Yeah, not on our
You
side,
sound
Dale.
fine here.
Okay, here we go. Kim, if we can have the next slide. Got all the schools open. It wasn't an easy summer, but it was a success. Kids are back in class safely and they're learning again. So we're thrilled with that. Lots of challenges, lots of success, and lots of hard work by the district teams to help the moves, the custodial teams to make it clean, and the contractors to get work to a state that allows education to occur. Next slide, please. Budget highlights. So with a lot of projects, getting further along and in fact complete in the case of Lincoln and Garfield are virtually complete, we're able to adjust our forecasts and update them to reflect the current market conditions, the known costs for those projects. And then what we have to look forward to is the bidding of the next 5 projects in the next 3 months. And that'll allow us a lot of budget certainty, which I'm looking forward to. So, slide, please. This is the monthly financial summary that Olivia generates. And Olivia, if you're ready to kind of walk us through this, it's probably small to read, but you could probably help them understand this chart.
Sure, we just wanted to do a quick recap of the financial summary. You've been receiving this each month in your regular bond update, but we have made a couple of changes this month that we wanted to highlight. So just starting with the top part of the summary, that is the big picture when we look at both sides of the resources available for our projects and the expenses, not only paid to date, but projected to complete all of our projects. So you can see our total program is approaching $263 million in total when we encompass all of the resources available to us in addition to the bond proceeds. And you can also see what I want to point out are 2 things that will continue to change over time. So on the left side, total program resources. The last item is projected resources through the end of the program. So when we look at the big picture, we want to not only account for everything that we've actually received in hand, but also what we believe we'll receive between now and the end of the program, which would include interest earnings, some additional grant resources, E-rate reimbursements, and energy conservation reimbursements. So we pay attention and we track all of those potential resources and account for those. On the other side, when we talk about total program requirements, we also look at projected cost to complete, which is essentially the total projected cost of each project less what we've paid to date. And you can see the difference between our total projected costs and our total program resources are the unallocated program reserves. So we have just under $5 million of unallocated program reserves. And those are truly unallocated at this point. And you can see at the bottom half of the report, when we look at the total projected costs, you'll see that we've added some shading, some colors to each of those numbers. And what we wanted to make really clear was if you see a number in green, that means that project is probably complete or nearing completion. So we're pretty confident about those numbers. If a number is highlighted in yellow, we have a contract in place, but there will likely still be some changes. And so that's kind of what we're categorizing as medium risk. And for the numbers in red, those represent projected cost of projects that we haven't contracted or gone out for bid yet. So those numbers are the most likely to fluctuate between now and the end of the program. So we just want you to understand there's 4 projects that we've yet to bid. And so those are the numbers that we're paying the most attention to right now. And especially when it comes to the unallocated program reserves, knowing that, we're allocating as we go, and we know that we have about $5 million left to allocate. So just looking at the big picture, this encompasses each site's original bond allocation, how we're accounting for all the additional funding sources, the total projected cost, what we've paid to date, and the projected cost to complete. Overall, we've paid out 45% of our total bond program, which is quite a bit, right? Over about $120 million we've paid through the end of July 31st. So we're right at that halfway point when it comes to cash out the door. So if there's questions about the financial summary or how information is presented or what's behind those numbers, we wanted to allow a little bit of time if there were questions for that.
As a reminder, board members, if you have a question, please raise your virtual hand on the platform. And we have one from Director Vince Adams.
So first of all, I want to say thank you so much for the color coding on the total projected costs. That's really helpful, and I've got to change my view so I can actually see people again. There we go. No, I just really appreciate that. Draws the eye to where attention needs to be. Just another, it's a small thing, but so helpful. Can you walk through? I sent in a question around. You have a couple asks of the board, a couple items here for action coming up, and I asked a question around how those funds were going to accrue. And can you just walk through that response that you gave? And thank you so much for that.
Sure. I'll probably let Dale handle this because he's prepared some additional information regarding the change order request for Garfield and Lincoln. But those numbers are also reflected on this financial summary. You can probably tell that.
I'm looking for that email. I apologize. I don't have the questions memorized, Vince.
Sorry, it was will the reserve request for Garfield and Lincoln accrue to the unallocated program reserves? And so when I was looking at the action items, I was looking at unallocated reserves, and so I was like, where are these going to be drawn out of? And so I was just trying to understand that.
Okay, thank you for the reminder, and I did find the email. So tonight's reserve allocation requests are based on the total forecast costs for each project. And the next slide you'll see, if I recall, is the slide enumerating the change orders. Yeah, that's a good idea. This slide here shows kind of our calculations for the construction side of the Lincoln costs. So the Fortis contract is, roughly 75% of the total cost of that project. The remaining amount is what we call soft costs, architecture, permits, inspections, all of those kind of furnishings, et cetera. The total of all of that is the total cost of the forecast cost of the project. And you'll see that total forecast in the previous slide. That slide, those highlighted color numbers are the total forecast costs. Okay. And then to get to this allocation request, to the next slide, or not the next slide, I'm sorry. It's the actual request that's in the board packet for approval. It has a chart that shows the total forecast cost and the total previously allocated funds, including the original bond, any grants that were assigned to a specific project. And then there's a delta basically that we're asking the board for allocation to make up the total cost of the project. So I'm sorry, there's too many graphics.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I add to that? Is that, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kim.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the answer to Vince's question is it's accounted for in the financial summary as a pending allocation. So the board action tonight would not do anything to change that $4.9 million left of unallocated. That would stay the same. It's already accounted for in our numbers here.
Thanks, Olivia.
Great. And so I just really appreciate this. And, this is just another case of where, this is complex. It's hard for board members to understand. It's hard for the public to understand, but I just really appreciate the transparency of the Braun team and the lack of surprises here. I mean, that you're clear and that we're on track. I've been watching that 2%, that unallocated reserve this whole time. And I've been asking questions about this, for 3 years now. And so I just really appreciate the consistency and the transparency of the bond team. And it just inspires a lot of confidence in me as a board member. And I hope that it's inspiring confidence in the community as well. So thanks a lot for responding to that question. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Vince. Next up is Sarah.
Yeah, I also really appreciated the color coding of this this information. It made it easy to digest. I was just wondering, I understand that the high risk pieces are things that haven't been bid. Do we, and I know at one point we had a project that went out for bid and the bids came out really high, and then we were able to delay that part of the project and go for another round, and things came back more reasonably. Do we have any idea right now how costs and how bids are coming in as we move into these last few projects?
Earlier this year, the lumber prices spiked, for example, and so did a lot of other products. And there was a relaxing of that. Lumber is back down to more reasonable values, for example. But there's uncertainty right now about availability of materials. We'll see in our reports this month that a lot of things are kind of showing up whenever they show up, and it's hard to predict. And uncertainty of any kind can make costs go up. So our last round of forecasts, which these numbers reflect, we did increase our contingencies, anticipating, some risk in that area. So maybe we'll get lucky and we won't need that, and we can reallocate those funds. But right now, we did increase our forecast to cover what we think could come at us.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other board members with questions or clarifications or comments?
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Quick question, Dale, if you could go to the slide which shows the percentage of the change orders to the total cost. It shows here 6 to 7%. And you did speak a little bit about the uncertainties in the past and the present. Could you speak a little bit about what's the industry? I hate to say industry standard because risks differ from one region to another. but is 7 to 6% to be expected of change orders in a school construction? Or what's the average, or what's the range?
So and I know if you notice, I put the word new at the top of that chart, Lincoln Elementary new. We are used to seeing something in the 5% range for new construction projects. And this one is affected by the pandemic. And it's also affected by things we didn't see underground. The change order we're asking for approval for this evening includes the excavation replacement of a bunch of soft soils that were, basically unforeseen. Quite a bit, actually. If you look at the total of this request plus one, a change order that they were issued previously, we're probably in the $400,000 range for total soft spot. We call them soft spots repair. So the 6.35 does not surprise me in this day and age with the, all of those kind of variables. Now on the next slide, you'll see I put in that parentheses add renovation addition projects. Older buildings are full of surprises, and typically you'd see something in the 10 to 12% range. And here I was pleased that it's only coming in at about 8. So, projects vary depending what you uncover. Older buildings in particular are full of surprises.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to highlight something, and correct me if I'm wrong, but given that we had a flexible contracting approach with the GMP and our planning and budgeting, those change orders are still within the $199 million plus premiums and interest and from the allocated reserves of the bond. So we're not increasing taxes on the taxpayer from what we promised them, and we're not taking money from our general fund to fulfill those change orders, correct?
Yeah, Olivia and Kim might better answer that.
That is accurate.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, Ryan?
I was just going to speak a little bit more to the uncertainty, and that as we get closer to the end and those unappropriated dollars, we are being hyper vigilant about it. There's some concern and some anxiety that comes with 5 projects all going out in the next couple of months. So I also want to be, clear and transparent that we're also seeing that we're getting close to the end, and also we're the majority of our funds are accounted for, planned for, and we're just going to continue to watch closely over the next couple of months.
Thank you, thank you. Keep us updated, and really appreciate the frequent update to the board. That keeps us aware, and the risks and progress is communicated with the public transparency with that. So thank you for doing that.
Sure. Shauna has a question.
Oh, Shauna, sorry. And then Shauna did Lou.
Thanks,
Shauna?
Tammy. My question builds off something that Ryan just shared, and I'm just wondering if there is, with the current bond coming to the end of its timeline, essentially, is there any urgency around having funds spent by the end of that time, or can those funds be carried over if a project, let's say, is in the works and hasn't been completed yet within that timeline? Is there a deadline by which the funds must be spent and expended? Do we have any issue with that, or is there flexibility around that?
In general, the majority of the funds have to be spent within a number of years within the bond issuance. And so that's really what we're paying attention to. 85% of the proceeds have to be spent within 3 years of the issuance. And so part of that is why we staggered and did 2 different series of bond issues. And so the reality is when the majority of, or when the projects are complete, there's not likely to be a large, amount of money left at that time. And at that point in time, it's just restricted to be used for capital expenses. And the repayment of the debt is, going out for another 20 years from now. So that doesn't impact anything with the proceeds. We have those now. They're there, but we just have to make sure that we follow compliance and spend the majority within the first 3 years of issuance.
Thanks, Olivia.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Olivia. Thanks, Shauna, for the question. And Louis?
Yeah, I wanted to forgot. Sorry. That was me. I'm so sorry, everybody. I wanted to wait till we talked about this part because it was more of a like logistical as things are being completed question. As far as like sustaining the newness, not necessarily the newness, but like the new constructed areas. And this just came up today, that's why I didn't email you ahead of time, sorry about that, but a lot of cars have popped the corners of that new road that leads to Lincoln, and like it's gonna, you can see it digging in pretty deep already on the newly planted grass and everything, and that wear and tear over time. I don't know if there's plans to help sustain those new areas so that there's not long-term costs associated with replacing the grass and the dirt and all the things that are getting pulled out as people accidentally drive over those corners. Does that make sense?
Yes, so I'm working on that. Definitely, we have landscaping that's been installed and is much more robust than what we had on the old campuses. And we have more square footage. And so we've already increased custodial service or custodial staffing at both Garfield and Lincoln. And we're monitoring that to see if it's adequate, because definitely we want to maintain these nice new spaces. We're also looking at our grounds crew to see what we're going to do to evaluating how we're going to supplement the grounds crew, because there's no way that they can do this higher level of detailed work within their current staffing level. But in the meantime, Fortis is still working on the grounds. Our contractor is still working on the grounds. So we'll be kind of keeping up on those things that occur in the next months here. And we are committed as a maintenance department to maintaining the quality of construction and landscaping that was installed.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it's something I hadn't thought would be an issue, right? You probably all didn't either, like to put maybe some little tone thingies right there, but it does add up over time. It may seem like something small to like drive over landscaping, but it does add up over time as it continues to happen, because I know that then there's investment on maintaining those areas and stuff like that. So that thanks for adding.
Well, and I would also add that there's little things that pop up as we live in the spaces. We found some spaces at Lincoln that are going to need some wainscoting on the walls down by the stairwells. And so just little things that we notice right away are going to not wear well. So we make some changes to add a little bit of extra wainscoting so that we aren't dealing with it on a regular basis. And that's a natural part of moving into a space.
Okay, so these smaller like expenses that will save money in the long run, right?
Correct.
Okay, well, thanks.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, and our time is up. So I would like to move to Garfield Fortis change order and bond reserve allocation. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve this item? The motion wording is in your packet. If you have an alternative motion, please write it and send it before you read it. Vince?
I move to authorize a change order to Fortis Construction in the amount of $281,163.48 and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $631,210 for Garfield Elementary School to fully fund the bond work promised for the school.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lou. We can take down the share screen. And with that, any further discussion? Seeing there's no discussion, we will enter to a vote. It's been moved by Director Adams and seconded by Co-Vice Chair Louis White-Bear to authorize a change order to Fortis Construction in the amount of $281,163.48, and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $631,210 for Garfield Elementary School to fully fund the bond work promised for the district. And we will go with a roll call vote. Vince, what's your vote?
I vote aye.
Sarah, what's your vote?
Yes.
Shauna, what's your vote?
Aye.
Lou, what's your vote? and Therese and Tina are excused. And I vote aye. The motion passes with 5 votes. Next item on the agenda is Lincoln Fortis change order and bond reserve allocation. Does anyone wish to have a motion to approve this action? And we have a hand from Vince.
So I move to authorize a change order for Fortis Construction in the amount of $217,162.69 and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $1,016,730 for Lincoln Elementary School to fully fund the bond work promised for the school.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Sarah. Is there any discussion? Seeing there's no further discussion, we will enter on a vote on the motion to authorize a change order to Fortis Construction in the amount of $217,162.69 and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $1,016,730 for Lincoln Elementary School to fully fund the bond work promised for the school. Vince, what's your vote?
Aye.
Shauna, what's your vote?
Aye.
Lou, what's your vote?
Aye.
Sarah, what's your vote?
Aye.
And Therese and Tina are excused, and I vote aye. Passes with 5 votes. Next item on the agenda is school board goals.
Before we move on, I just wanted to say thanks to Kim and Dale for presenting tonight, and to go ahead and excuse them. Thanks for all the hard work, team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim and Dale. Have a good night. So as a reminder, this is the board's opportunity to review and revise as needed the current board goals, especially the current board goal number 6. Your packet contains the current goals. Please note that there is no motions necessary when making edits. The only action will be needed is when the goals are finalized and ready for adoption at a future meeting. I will now open the floor for board members to discuss the wording of the board goals. We have Sarah.
Yeah, I was just, as I was looking at board goal number 6, with the new proposed language to adopt it. For the current environment, I was wondering if we should include wording in there that stresses putting all of these layers of safety precaution in place, because really our goal is to keep our schools open. And I think stressing keeping the schools open. And I also, the other piece that I was thinking about was including wording about working with community partners, because really keeping our schools open is going to take the community and our partners in the community, including the health department and groups like Casa Latina Unidos and the groups that help us do outreach to our families. So those were the two. So when I was reading it, I felt like there were pieces that we might want to include there.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to affirm that that's really my goal, is to keep our schools open this year, and whatever steps we need to take, partnerships we need to develop and continue to build, systems and structures that need to be in place, as well as prevention measures. That's really important to me, and something that I take very seriously, recognizing where we are 19 months into this pandemic and how important it is for kids to be in school in person.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ben. Ryan, 100% agreed. Next up is Vince and then Lou. Vince?
Right. I'm just focusing on goal 6. Really appreciated all the bullets under there. I appreciate the intent behind each of them. I have only one suggestion, and that is on the 5th bullet. It reads as pay particular attention to communities that are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. I would suggest a rephrasing there to say prioritize communities that are disproportionately impacted. So it just, implies more action rather than just paying attention to it. It implies that we're going to actually do something to reallocate resources and action.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up is Luke.
Just real quick, we're only focusing on goal 6 tonight, right? Because that's the one that's highlighted in the pack.
Correct.
That's
Okay,
correct.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was clear for everybody listening, because that wasn't confusing.
So what I took away from our last conversation was that we wanted to spend more intentional time around those first 5 goals. But goal 6, because of where we're at right now, that needed to be prioritized. And so that's why I'm just bringing that one back tonight. But
Okay.
that recognizing that more work will go into those other 5 goals over throughout the year.
I just wanted to make sure our community knew why we were only talking about goal 6.
Yeah, and me sharing that is just to kind of reinforce that.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
apologize, I must have been, I was confusing in the beginning.
For number 1, I think it would be helpful to clarify like what the educational blueprint, like where that's based out of. Is it
Okay.
like the district one? Is it from the state? Like the educational blueprint, I think would be good to like clarify.
So maybe to say something like implement the most current Oregon Department of Education educational blueprint.
Yeah, that way it's clear like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think as many descriptor words for where these are coming from is
Yeah.
helpful.
And when I was working on that one of the things is that sort of the language has changed with different revisions.
Mhm.
So it's also, I was trying to keep it sort of broad, but I think that ODE piece really
Yeah.
points back to where these are coming from.
Yeah, just the originating piece of it. Yeah, and that was, I think only, yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
So can I just recap
Yes, please.
where I think we are?
Yes.
So in number 1, I'm saying current ODE educational blueprint. In number 6, saying prioritize communities, and then adding number 6 and number 7. Do you want us to put the keeping our schools open as part of that overall broad goal?
I
at the
think
top?
that's the overall broad goal was.
Mhm. As
That's
well as
gotta be
working,
focused.
as well as working with community partners, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of those are sort of like, we want to, as a community, work together to keep schools open, and these are the pieces that are gonna fall under that. And does that sound reasonable to others?
I see a shakes and thumbs up. Yeah, I am in favor of that. I think keeping schools open as much as possible,
Mhm.
in-person instruction as much as possible, and safety are things to be highlighted in the main goal.
Okay. So then, based on the feedback, we will work on just updating this, then bring it back on October 14th for a final review.
Absolutely. Ryan, it's a question rather than a statement or directive. How do you feel about stipulating in the strategies or the goal? What we are doing in terms of the Swiss cheese model, our reasons model, in terms of adding as many layers of prevention and protection to reduce risk, basically. I think it's very important to highlight that as a strategy to achieve the goal. And I don't see it specifically,
And I think that would actually end up as number 6 then.
yeah,
Again, implementing basically the scientific based
Yeah, CDC, so.
recommendations in implementing those. So we can come up with some other piece there to add as well.
yeah, and I agree, it's more of a strategy to achieve the goal rather than part of the goal.
Yeah.
Does that seem agreeable to the rest of the board? Awesome. Anything else?
And Jonathan.
Oh, sorry, Shauna.
That's okay. Just building on that in the overarching goal of maybe even calling out that making decisions focused on health and safety and well-being for students, staff, and the community focused on and building in what you were talking about, Sammy, with the preventative measures, taking all preventative measures possible and prioritizing keeping schools open and children in school.
Well, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, let's move to board norms. As a reminder, this is the board's opportunity to review and revise as needed the current board norms. Your packet contains the current norms, which are also published on the school board website. Please note that no motions are necessary when making edits. The only action that will be needed is the when and if the norms are finalized and ready for adoption at a future meeting. I will now open the floor for board members to discuss the wording for of the board norms. Vince and then Lou.
So I'm going to make a disruptive comment, just like I did when we started talking about goals. And as I was reading through both the norms and our operating guidelines, I realized that they've been around for a while, and they are holdovers largely from board members that aren't on the board anymore. They do capture some of the culture that existed then, but the board's culture has changed. And one of the purposes of operating agreements and norms is to capture that. It's to capture our culture and our practices and highlight those. They're also tools for focusing our attention on those practices that we want to improve. And my sense is that these documents are old and they're somewhat out of date. We've tinkered with them over time, but I think it's time for the board to take a much closer look at these and you really ask the question, do these really reflect our board, where we're at right now, and who we want to become, who we want this board to be in the next couple of years? I think they're good. I mean, I'm happy with approving them, but I have lots of notes across both documents. And so I would suggest a process that's outside of a board meeting where we review these and then bring them back for the board to consider. Would be my suggestion. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Vince. So I hear from you, and if that's okay, I'll pause on this point and ask the board. What I hear from you is reserving time as a work session for the board to deliberate further and have a deeper discussion for the board norms and the working agreements. Is that correct, Vince?
I could even see a working group, perhaps having the superintendent, because the superintendent is part of this conversation, particularly with our operating agreement. I could see a superintendent working group where board members and the superintendent work together to modify these documents and bring them back for full board consideration. Maybe an iterative process is what I was envisioning. I don't think I might suggest a board committee, but with demands on staff time right now, I don't think that is the most efficient way to do the work. I think doing it with the superintendent is probably better.
All right, so on that topic or that suggestion, how does the board and Ryan feel?
What I would want to know is, because we're sort of starting that same process with our board goals. And so as I think about it, I think that we would probably, based on the conversation from last month or last meeting, start with those board goals. And because that's a pretty rich document and that's going to need some time. So in terms of prioritization, I was thinking that would be the priority. So I just want to better understand that perspective from the board.
Any comments on that, Lou?
No, I mean, I can put my hand down because it was just,
No, it's all right.
it was just to suggest adding something.
Okay. So would you feel comfortable, Vince, that we focus on the board goals and after that we revisit a deeper discussion on both?
I could see a couple pathways. One, we could have board members give input to a one-on-one board member, and we can go ahead and make revisions and bring back a document. It's a fairly quick way to do this. It's not a very reflective process, but it'd be a quick way to make some quick and tidy revisions to this document and then bring it back for approval. That's kind of the short path. Then the other way is what the superintendent has suggested is, focus on goals and just provisionally approve these for the next year or so, and then come back maybe next year. And take a deeper look. Yeah.
Sorry, with these two tasks, what seems to be favorable to the board? Task one, a champion for the norms and the working agreements to receive input. Task two is we focus on the goals, we approve those provisionally, and we revisit them later on after we finish the goals. So path one or path two? Lou and Sarah.
I kind of like path two better because it's like a more collaborative feeling approach, and sometimes it's hard for us to get feedback and sometimes maybe hear things differently, or then people are like, hey, what happened to my suggestion? And that kind of stuff. And but if we do that, I would like to insert a norm if possible, if for a conditional approval kind of thing around allowing flexibility with the agenda to allow more time for topics as I don't know how to word it, but sometimes when we have an agenda, because one of our board norms is end on time. And I feel like we actually, because we like to deliberate and we like to be very thorough with our conversations, that sometimes we spend more time than we allocate on certain topics. And that would allow a little bit of flexibility with that, without the pressure of the time, even though we do strive to end on time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense though?
I'm not sure if I heard you right. Are you asking for more flexibility with the time or more commitment with the time?
More flexibility, because and sometimes it's okay to be like, hey, we're not going to have time. If we've done that before too, and that's not really a board norm to say like we need to come back to this topic later, and that's not reflected in our norms. And so that's where that flexibility piece is that I'm talking about, because some stuff we're like, we really need more time on this, and so we need to come back to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yes. Sarah? Okay, Shauna. Sarah?
Yeah, so I agree with Lou that path two makes more sense to me because I think it would lead to a more thoughtful, collaborative process. I think if we decide to take path two, I think we need to prioritize the goals, and maybe you really look at this as a step-by-step process, because I don't want to get to a point where we're trying to revise all of these documents in a big collaborative process, and we're taking up our superintendent's time, and we're taking up a lot of meeting time working on these when there are other things we need to be doing in needs too. So I think if we do step two, I think we need to say, okay, we're gonna do this year, we're gonna do goals, we're gonna adopt these things sort of provisionally with the understanding that, next year the focus will be on revising our board norms, and maybe both the board and superintendent norms. But I think I just want to make sure that we're giving ourselves enough time to do it well, and enough time that we are not taking up tons of meeting time right now revising all these documents.
Okay. Thank you. Shauna?
I agree with much of what's been shared already in terms of wanting to be really mindful of time, the limited time that we have together to really have these open discussions, and also the time it takes to do this work really, really well. I also think it's important to think about the order in which we do them, because board norms have to do with how we interact, how we deliberate, how we come together, how we discuss. And so if we go with the path of working on board goals this year, for instance, and board norms next year, we still need some type of working agreement, even if we're approving what we have now or what we have with minor revisions, with the idea of a much deeper, more thoughtful, reflective dive later, that we still may want to center that somewhere in our work, because it does lay the groundwork for how we come together.
Yeah. Good. So if there's no objection, we'll go with the following. Number one, we're gonna go with the path that is sequential. We'll focus on board goals, approve provisionally board norms and the working agreements with minor edits if necessary. That's number one. Number two, since we have more time and flexibility with time, if there are some comments or things that the board members would really want to see in these norms and working agreements, I would like to entertain that right now since we have some time for it. And Lou's point is noted. That's one of those that we could consider in a later meeting. I'll have the floor for two suggestions as well. Number one is a suggestion to cross-reference with the language that Vince developed, and probably it was shared with the board prior to Shauna's joining us. I'm not sure before July or after July. It's language about how to handle disruptive meetings and how the board itself can have an involvement in how to handle that disruptive meetings and the chair, if you remember that language. So having a document about that and not necessarily including it, but referencing it in either the norms or the working agreements. I'm not sure which one is more appropriate. So that's my first suggestion of an addition. The second suggestion of an addition is cross-referencing the social media guidelines that's available on our website. Board members get familiar with it as soon as they join the board. Those guidelines have been developed probably by one of the former chairs, maybe Alexis or someone before Alexis. So they were developed by Alexis and they were not formally voted on. However, I think it's good for us at least to cross-reference it. So if a new board member or a community member is reading what we are agreeing on, those guidelines are referenced. Personally, I found them very helpful, and it would have been even better if I would lean on them at the beginning when I read either the norms or the working agreements. So my suggestion is number one is cross-referencing the language about how to handle a disruptive meeting. That's Vince worked on developing, and the second one is related to the social media guidelines. With that, is there any other suggestions, comments, or things that you really want to see? Yes.
The other thing, just going back to the cover sheet, that in the future, we plan to come back with policy BBF, which is about board member standards of conduct. And so while I hear you trying to reference those procedural pieces here, I also want to just note that that's another piece that we want to also come back around to and review.
Thank you. And I don't have any objection for that. I probably actually it's even better for to be in BBF, honestly.
Okay, so does that change what you're thinking of for these other two?
It does. Yeah, these two might be better suited in BBF.
Okay,
Don't you think? Yeah,
I thought that I saw the connection between that policy
yeah,
and the working agreements.
Yeah.
And so I can see how that could be the case. It just means that you're gonna have to sort of hold it in abeyance until we get to that point.
okay.
Well, I guess not really in advance because you can, those things are still there. They're just not necessarily connected to the policy yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense to board members who are listening in?
Yes? All right, sounds good. Yeah,
Well,
sure.
no, I can unmute myself. I'm just curious, when are we going to come back to, when are you proposing that we should come back to policy BBF?
We have, I would say sometime next month would be doable.
Okay.
Cool. All right, with that, we're done with board norms.
Did we-
I'm sorry.
I don't know that we got language for Lou's idea or suggestion.
Oh,
Right, sorry.
it was, that's why I was like, I don't know how to word it right now, but it's more, or I should have wrote it out ahead of time, sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's around having flexibility with our agenda in order to engage in deeper discussion around agenda items. I think that would capture what I'm saying.
So one of the things I'm wondering is on number A1, it just right now it says start on time, use time wisely, and end on time. I'm wondering if we were to say something like start on time, use time wisely based on agenda topics or something like that. I mean, I think what you're trying to get to is some flexibility,
Yeah,
and not necessarily because we still have to, and it's a reasonable hour, but how we utilize that time within the meeting may
Yeah.
need to change. Is
yeah,
that-
but I think that would capture it, because it's about having that flexibility with the agenda that we have set.
Uh-huh.
And we've actually operated like that, but we don't have it in our.
We actually have the opposite sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was like, it's kind of. Maybe we could put strive to and on to.
Last time we ended her.
We
That's
did.
perfect.
Just have to throw that out there.
And I'll give you the credit for it.
She was fishing for that compliment.
So what if we just said that for now?
Yeah.
Start on time, use time wisely, based on agenda topics.
Yeah, because I think that allows for that, because it's based on how we're allocating our time. And
Okay.
All right, with that, I want to welcome Director Therese Jones, who just joined us today, or right now. And I want to acknowledge Therese had a commitment with the school, so thank you for joining us, Therese.
Thanks, Sammy.
And just for where we are right now, we're discussing board norms and working agreements. And the discussion has been that there were some edits or suggestions of what to change, but Vince gave a really good suggestion around pausing, finishing board goals, and then we will deliberate in deeper discussion later on with board norms and working agreements and have time to do that in the future. And in the meanwhile, we will approve provisionally the norms and the working agreements as they stand now with some minor edits and suggestions that were proposed by the board. All right, with that, any further comments or questions? Lou, you had your hands up, I believe it was for this suggestion, right?
Yeah, it's down right now, though.
Awesome. Now, just want to make sure.
I was like, what? I was like, confused, and then it's in person.
Cool. All right, just procedurally, we're done with the board norms. Now, the next item on the agenda is board and superintendent's working agreements. Is there any discussion or further discussion on it? All right, seeing none. Budget committee vacancies. Does anyone wish to make a?
Shauna's hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shauna.
That's okay.
I was putting mine up.
I just wanted really quickly, as we're going through with the board norms, just one question. Are we also gathering any additional comments that come up on those in any way? Is there anyone
Right
that
now.
send them to? If we have some wording changes or little things is what I'm thinking.
Oh, if you have little things, I would suggest if you send them to Kim and they will be incorporated in the draft. So definitely feel free to send them directly to Kim. Does
Thanks.
that sound good for Brian and Kim?
As long as it's not more substantive and we should discuss it. If it's grammatical or conventions, that's something that just send our way. But if you want to, if there's one that you want to add or one you want greater clarity around, I think we should have that conversation now.
Right. So you feel comfortable with that if you have nothing you feel needs to be debated or discussed? Awesome. Liv?
Mine was actually about seeing if we could, what letter is it? On the B6 one, I think that there's a particular word in there that I think can give a perception of us all agreeing on everything all the time, and when that's not always the case, even if we agree with the decisions. And it's the use of the word of unity and harmony together that makes it, that implies that we're always on the same page and always in agreement with everything. And I think that that's a misconception sometimes about boards. And I don't think we need both of them in there, but I think unity is definitely the one I favor over harmony because it has a different meaning. And so I just wanted to bring that to the board and see. I'm not saying like I don't think we should agree on things, but the reality is we don't always agree with things with each other. And that's just a consideration. It's not a huge change, but it can help with the perception of the board.
All right, so we'll pause on that comment and ask the board, how do you feel about that comment?
I have a comment on that.
Sarah?
So it's interesting that you favor unity, because when I look at that, I would favor harmony, because to me, unity means we all agree or are unified. And harmony says, you know, we're all working together and getting along, but we're not necessarily agreeing. So, I mean, that's, I agree that that both of those words together creates a problem. In a way, I'm not sure either word is quite the perfect word, but I don't know, and you can disagree with my perception of unity and harmony if you would like, but I just feel like if we're trying to avoid the perception that we're all always in agreement, unity to me gives more of that perception than harmony.
All right, Therese, and then I will open up for others as well. Therese?
Thanks, Sammy. And thank you everyone for allowing me to join the conversation late. I would agree. I had a similar comment about the unity and harmony, feeling like they don't, I'm not sure that we would need both of those, but I was thinking that I feel like the word harmony is probably more intended to get at the idea that we do this and we conduct business in a respectful way that recognizes the room for differing viewpoints, but that the way we conduct ourselves in carrying out business is able to be, I don't personally think the word harmony quite gets at that, but I suspect that's what it's going for. And I'm wondering how people would feel if we, well, and now with the discussion around unity, maybe neither of these words really work, but something that gets at the, a unified intention and in a manner that's, becoming of the role that we have and the task that we have been, that we have undertaken in doing this public work. I don't think harmony is the right word for that, but I do think it is worth recognizing that the culture of our board is one that intends to be, have a threshold of the way we conduct business that we agree to stay above. That's my comment.
Thank you. Vince, is your comments regarding this subject, this point or another?
It is. I've come across language around this that fits nicely, and I would add the clause at the beginning of this. I mean, you can choose unity or harmony or get rid of it, but what I would add is conduct the business of the board with care and respect, fostering unity, harmony, and open communications within the board. Now, if you want to omit unity or harmony, but what I really appreciate the idea of conducting the business of the board with care and respect. And I think it really drives to how we are supposed to conduct ourselves, even when we're disagreeing.
Thank you. If that's okay, Lou, I'll go first with Shauna and then back to you.
Yep.
Shauna?
Mine's on another item, Sammy, so I can wait if there are other comments on unity and harmony in that item.
Sounds good.
It was more to just like kind of explain a little bit more like why I favored unity. Either one works really, but because we should be like have some unity around decisions that are made, even if we're not like super excited about a full decision, but we still are supportive of the decision of the whole. So in that way, I feel like that's why unity stood out a little bit more, but I understand what y'all are saying too. I just wanted to bring that element into the word. So
thank you. If I would summarize what you're saying, and the way I would say it's even to external to someone, I would say we work towards building consensus and we are okay with disagreeing. And whenever there are disagreements, we support the decision of the majority, and we work on working as a team. And I'm not sure if we can capture all of these two sentences to agree in one word or the other, but probably that's the gist of what we're trying to accomplish, right?
yeah, pretty much.
There's some of that's in the board norms.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's an important enough point that I think it should be included in both.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with either word. So if anybody has a stronger feeling, then
Can I offer some compromise language?
yes.
Please do.
So I would suggest we have this item become conduct district business with care and respect, fostering board unity and open communication. Want to
Is
hear it again?
there- Yes, please.
Conduct district business with care and respect, fostering board unity and open communication.
Does that seem to address the concerns around this point from everybody and Lou?
I think so. I think that enough of us brought it up where it needed to get revised too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm okay if it didn't use unity, I was just adding that other element in.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no, I think that's good. I like that, including respect.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. So with that, we'll move into other points on under the norms and working agreements. Right.
Vince, you'll send that in to us.
Yes, I can.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vince. And Vince, you're up next for the other points, and then Shauna.
Nope, I'm lowering my hand.
All right, Shauna.
Right, thanks, Sammy. The item I'm looking at is B8, which says insist on all relevant qualitative and quantitative data and other sources of accurate information before making a decision. And I agree with the sentiment of this bullet, but the language insist on feels a little bit combative to me. And so I was wondering about a change towards something like ensure all relevant qualitative and quantitative data and other sources of accurate information have been evaluated, shared, and understood before making a decision. And I can type that up and share it so that others can see it, or I can read it again, or both.
Can you read it again and also share it with Kim afterwards?
Sure.
So she can.
So it's B8, and my suggested revision is ensure that all relevant qualitative and quantitative data and other sources of accurate information have been evaluated, shared, and understood before making a decision.
Wonderful, thank you. So please share it with Kim. And any objections from the board, or does that seem agreeable? If it seems agreeable, a thumbs up. All right, I see virtual or physical thumbs up, so. Lou? Yes, awesome. All right, see, it seems to be there's a consensus on Shauna's suggestion, so we will add it. Any other suggestions? All right, seeing none, we need to move to the next item on the agenda. Budget Committee vacancies. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve this item? The motion wording is in your packet. If you plan to propose a different wording, please send it to Kim before you read it and then read it out. Is there a motion? Vince, what's your motion?
I move the board identify 2 full-term openings for the 2022 Budget Committee and approve the recruitment schedule as presented by staff.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? I do have a discussion on the motion. I want to thank our budget committees, committee members who have served and their term has expired. Bill Daughtry and Shauna Samini, current board member. Thank you, Shauna, for serving during the last years. It's been really valuable. With that, I want to encourage anyone who's watching, colleagues on the school board, to recruit people to apply. And I'll ask Kim to share an email with you as soon as a news piece is published. If anyone is watching, stay tuned to the Corvallis School District website. It will include details about the announcements and how to apply and the requirements to apply and the deadline and all of that. So now we are going to identify the vacancies and community members can apply. And it's very valuable and important experience and very important for the district to have committee members. Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to add that if people are thinking about applying and they're not sure what this would involve, I'm sure that any member of the current budget committee or the board members, because we all serve on the budget committee, would be happy to talk to you about what a budget committee person does. So feel free to reach out to somebody.
Thank you, Sarah. Any further discussion? Seeing that there's no further discussion, it's been moved that the board identify 2 full-term openings on the 2022 Budget Committee and approve the recruitment schedule as presented by staff. With that, we will enter into a vote. Lou, what's your vote?
Aye.
Therese, what's your vote?
Aye.
Shauna, what's your vote?
Aye.
Sarah, what's your vote?
Aye.
Vince?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Tiana is excused. The motion passes. All right, purchase of event tents. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve this item? The motion wording is in your packet. We have a motion, we have a Sarah.
I move to approve the purchase of 12 event tents from Olympic Tent to provide additional covered outdoor space at an estimated cost of $215,642. I further move that Olivia Myers-Bush, Director of Finance and Operations, be authorized by the board to approve final payment of this purchase.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lou. Is there any discussion on the motion? Sarah, or no?
Yeah, I just want to say, I've been hearing a lot of concern about outdoor space and the ability for students to eat lunch outdoors and be outdoors, especially as weather starts changing. So just want to point out to anybody watching and parents who are concerned about that this is a step we are taking so that we can provide more covered outdoor space at our school so our students can have some time outdoors during the day.
All right, Vince, then Lou, then Therese. Vince?
I was going to ask staff if they would be willing to comment on what type of programming they were intending to deliver in these tents. I'm sort of asking on behalf of community. I know that the folks have been advocating for this, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, so last spring, we rented tents for a variety of purposes, eating outdoors being one of them right now that's going on, and knowing that the weather's going to change, and we're still trying to ensure as much fresh air as possible for students. So I could see them used for a variety of reasons, but the primary one is to create additional spaces for students to eat outdoors. The caveat has been weather permitting. And so this will allow us to continue on with that for a longer period of time, living in the Northwest. And the decision to make the purchase is because of the rental costs are fairly close to, for 6 weeks, or fairly close to what it would be to purchase these tents for a permanent basis. So that's why we're bringing this forward at this time. We've had lots of requests from principals and staff as well.
All right, we have Lou and then Therese.
I just had a question about the lifespan of these, so like if that was, if you happen to know, because I was thinking too, like, you never know the weather in June for some of the graduation stuff.
Yeah.
And it could either be very hot, and I think about people's health, and just with climate change and all, it's getting hotter and hotter, and,
Yeah.
or it could just rain in June.
Yeah.
So you live in Oregon. And so-
Yeah. So these won't last forever, but they're sturdy and durable, the same quality as we've been using. So we expect that they'll last for quite some time. And it will allow us to hold on to them over a period of years. So they'll last for a while, but again, that material does wear out. But yeah, I can think of lots of reasons we'll use them after as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks. So it's, I think it's important that folk know it's not like just a 1 year kind of purpose.
Yeah.
Like this is a multi-year, multi-purpose,
Yeah,
has tons of benefits, and
yeah,
as somebody who also does event planning kind of stuff, like
yeah,
this isn't for event planning, but I know that that racks up fast. So
yeah,
this
it
is,
does.
I feel such a wise like purchase, especially if coming out of the ESSER.
Yeah, which is really what those dollars are intended for.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Therese and then Shauna, and then I'll recognize myself. Therese?
Thanks, Amy. I just wanted to say that based on the curriculum night that I just attended, there's going to be a lot of happy parents to hear. And so for any community members listening who may not be thinking about why would we need these tents, it seems like a lot of money. I just want to assure those community members that there has been plenty of discussion among parents about concerns that we need to expand our outdoor space. And so this is an investment not just in the ability to expand our outdoor space. I think this is an investment in having the community understand that we have heard them and that the district prioritizes the feedback that they're getting, and they understand that the wellness of our children and preserving the wellness of our schools goes beyond just making sure they're okay in the classroom. It also matters how the parents feel about putting their kids on the bus or dropping them off in the carpool lane every morning. And so to know that we are taking seriously creating additional space is a way to help our families feel good about continuing to come and participate in in-person learning. So yay for the resources to be able to do it and for the commitment to follow through on it, for the parents who have advocated for it, and for all of those who are a little bit unsure about it. Please drive by and see all the kids enjoying the outdoor space. It will be really hard to not think it's a good investment when you see that. Thanks.
Thank you. Shauna?
Thanks, Sammy. I have a question for you, Ryan. I know that the tents have been something that have brought a lot of, as Teresa had shared, a lot of relief to parents who are looking for ways for their children and students to spend more time outdoors, more time breathing fresh air, worry about lunches and so on. And I really appreciated your explanation too, in terms of switching from renting to purchasing. And I had heard some worries in the community that all of a sudden tents are starting to disappear. And so that makes sense that they are maybe being picked up if the end of a rental period is coming into play. Do you have a sense of when tents are actually available once, if approved, assuming approved, and moving forward? Is there going to be a lag time when we should expect to maybe not have tents for a little while before they start showing up, just so we are able to also answer those questions for the community if we hear them?
Yeah, so that's why we added this agenda topic sort of at a later time, just because, or just in the last couple of days, because we know that it could take up to 4 weeks for those tents to be delivered and put up. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
That was a good one.
So Ryan, could you or staff highlight the procurement process or regulations around this? Do we need to go to a bid for this, or is it single source? Are there other options that we solicited and this is the best one?
Olivia, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to take that one?
Sure, I can speak to that real quick. We're probably going to consider this an emergency procurement. We did do some informal searching for the similar products from different vendors, and the biggest issues were around lead time and installation. And so I think we're just going to consider this an emergency procurement based on the circumstance and the timeliness to get these ordered.
Thank you, absolutely. And the rain is coming sooner than later. So I really appreciate this work. And I want to appreciate and thank the federal government for the support, because the money is going to be funded by the district's elementary and secondary school emergency relief ESSER funds too grants. So that has been really helpful and is being put to use into the intended purposes as discussed. With that, there's one comment from Therese, and then we'll go for a vote. Therese?
Thanks, Sammy. It's actually just a quick question. Well, two-part question. One is, what is the storage plan for these tents when they're not in use? And the second question is related to putting them into use and then taking them down again. Is there going to be any special need to train? I assume our facility staff will be, or maybe we can't set these up ourselves. Can we set them up ourselves? And if so, are we prepared, and have we equipped the facilities team with what they will need to be able to have a turnaround of assembly and disassembly when they're needed?
So at this point, we are having somebody else come in and set them up for us, just simply based on capacity and how fast we're running right now. So that's the initial plan. In terms of long-term storage, I think that they're going to be up more than they're going to be down. Honestly, in use more than they're going to be put away, but we'll find a space for them if we're in that set of circumstances. But as you know, we have lots of sunshine and we have lots of rain. And with both, it's nice to have these available. One of the things that I think, there's so many things you take away from the pandemic and learnings. And one of them has been that these have been super handy for a lot of different purposes. And so when we talked about not having them at the beginning of the school year, we got a lot of feedback as well from staff saying we really need those spaces and here's how well they work for us. So I think that it's something that we learn is important at all times of year. It's something we'll probably want to keep considering even potentially when these wear out.
I love that. So my question on the heels of that is if we are thinking about making this something that we're going to keep in our district, then at some point we will either want to take them down or move them to a new location. So the second part of my question, I don't think quite got addressed, which is, is our facility staff equipped? I mean, I don't actually can't picture the tents at the moment. And so are they equipped and do they have the resources they will need to be able to assemble these? And is it like a major production to put them up? I'm glad you're bringing people in to get them set up initially, but beyond that initial period, have we checked in with them to ensure that they feel equipped to support this new equipment that we're going to own?
Yeah, we haven't actually made a decision on that or what it will look like the next time. We've had some discussion about it, and our initial discussion was just about capacity, but also it would be good for somebody to observe and watch them putting them up. So we've had some initial conversations, but we haven't really landed on a long-term plan around that.
Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none. A vote is taken on the motion to approve the purchase of 12 event tents from Olympic Tents to provide additional covered outdoor space at an estimated cost of $215,642. And it's been further moved that Olivia Mayers-Bush, Director of Finance and Operations, be authorized by the board to approve final payment of this purchase. Vince?
Aye.
Lou?
Oh, shoot. I
Shauna?
Aye.
Therese?
Aye.
Sarah?
I
I vote aye. Passes unanimously. All right. Next item on the agenda is proclamation support for vaccination and pandemic safety. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve this item? Vince?
I move that the board approve the proclamation in support of vaccination and pandemic safety measures.
Is there a second?
second.
Second by Sarah. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'd like to Vince and then Luke. And then Sarah. Vince?
So I'd like to, this was not my idea, but it was something that is floating in the back of my head. And I really appreciate the leadership of our chair, bring this idea forward to take a stand. There are boards all over Oregon that have been being very vocal on these topics. And they haven't been talking in the same way. They have not been taking a stand for the safety of their students and their staff. And in fact, some boards have threatened to direct their superintendents to break the law and go against mandates for the protection and health and well-being of the folks in their community. So I think it's fitting that that Corvallis decides to take a stand and speak out in Oregon on this issue and take a stand for doing what's right, following guidelines, standing with your staff, standing with your students, and doing the right thing. So I'm looking forward to vote for this, and thank you, Sammy, for bringing me along.
Thank you, Vince. And I'll state to the record that therefore it's in the motion. They stipulate that members of the board who are able to be vaccinated are committed to following the same vaccine mandates expected of the district staff, faculty, and volunteers, and support the superintendent of the school, Corvallis School District, in making every effort practicable to protect the students and staff of the district, coordinate with local health authority, and remain compliant with state statutes, rules, and guidelines. It's very important that we walk the walk, and as elected officials, we follow the same expectations from our students and staff and administrators, especially if those expectations to protect lives and keep our schools open. So that's the motivation, and I urge supporting the proclamation. Up next is Lou, and then Sarah, and then Sean. Lou?
Oh, yeah, I just was gonna say, like, this is I think a really strong statement, and I think it's important as leaders in the community and as elected officials that we're holding ourselves to the same standards are being held of everybody else, and I really like that. I did have one friendly amendment though. I don't know if we can do friendly amendments when.
Unfortunately, Robert's rules don't have friendly amendments, but if you have an amendment and without an objection, it will go without.
That's what I was hoping we were discussing before. But it's okay. It's actually, yeah, it's a big deal one, but.
It's okay, if you, the floor is yours, if you have an amendment and it can be debated.
Yeah, we can talk about the amendment and then we can vote and then we can read.
Yes,
Yes, okay, I was just want to make sure we follow the proper, I was like, I didn't know where to put it, so thank you.
it's totally in order.
Yes, the whereas that talks about the vaccine requirement unless they have a documented medical or religious exemption. There's more than that in Oregon, so my friendly amendment was going to be a documented exemption under or following Oregon's exemption law. That way it's not specified in leaving any of them out.
Okay. So how about this? As we go through the different discussion from the board members, I would like you to write down with what I understand in the whereas number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, and you will strike documented medical or religious exemption and replace it with the language. So if you could write this down and send it to him and state it, and we'll have the motion on the floor. Sounds good?
Okay.
Awesome.
Apologies about that.
No problem. Now this is perfect. And after Lou, Sarah and Shauna, and then Therese.
And I really appreciate this resolution being brought forward. I think it's a really strong statement in support of you taking the measures we need to safely keep our schools open as much as we can this year. And it's also a statement that we are standing with our staff and employees who are under the mandate to get vaccinated. And so we're saying we will hold ourselves to that same standard. I think that's really important. I would ask the community that, as I said earlier, when we were talking about goals, keeping our schools open is really a community effort at this point. And so I would ask the community that's watching to join us in standing with our teachers and staff and school employees and volunteers, and also participate in the vaccine effort if you have not already. I will be getting my 3rd vaccine next week. I am eligible because I just finished chemo, and so I will be getting my updates, and I also will make sure my family is all vaccinated too, because it's going to take this year to help our kids out.
Thank you, Sarah. Shauna and then Therese. Shauna?
Thanks, Sammy. And I really appreciate you stepping back and, oh, it sounds like there's an echo coming through. Is that better now? Okay. Stepping back and giving the context. I think that's really important for the community to hear, that when the requirement came down from the state for school staff to be vaccinated, school boards were neglected in that requirement. And as elected officials who are our hope is to serve as role models in the community, to be voices of and from the community, to stand with the community, to stand with students, staff, and their families, that this is a step that we're taking, not as a partisan issue, not as a political issue, but as a public safety and health issue, to model what it is staff are being required to do as well, to say that we are there with you. We believe in keeping schools open and safe and keeping our communities safe. So, and thanks to everyone else too, in terms of your comments and encouragement for the community to stand forward with us.
Thank you. Therese and then Lou. Therese?
Thanks, Sammy. I'm really proud of our district for taking this stand and for sharing with our community our intention to place ourselves under a mandate that should have included us and didn't. And I honestly, I just can't help but wonder if we hadn't been excluded from the mandate in the first place, if the nature of the discourse around the school board and the mask and vaccine debate would have looked a little bit different. And so I hope that folks in Salem are hearing this too, and hearing our school district and hearing our school board say, please don't leave us out of, we see ourselves as essential to our school district. And if our teachers are essential, and if our classified staff are essential, if we think of all these people as essential, and that's our basis for requiring them to be vaccinated, then we should not be excluding school board members, because we fill an essential role. It is a different role. It is a distinct role, but it is still an essential role, both of governance and of representing and bringing our community into the daily happenings of our school district. And so I'm glad to be vaccinated, and I'm happy to support others in our community as they hopefully make the leap and decide to join us in being vaccinated, our staff. I do want to recognize that I know for many people, vaccines, it's not a light thing. I mean, it's something that people have really had to give thought to. And so I appreciate those who have done that, have participated in that thinking, and have been able to reach that conclusion for themselves. I appreciate those who are doing it, even if they don't personally feel like it's something that they would need to do to keep themselves safe, because they see it as making an investment in keeping our kids safe. So I really want to make an appeal to OSU to help us with our community effort to keep our kids in school by encouraging our newly returning college students to treat themselves as an integral part of the Corvallis community. Some of them have been away for a very long time and they're returning. They may not feel like Corvallis is home. Home may be where they have come from or where their parents still are. But while they're living and walking the streets of Corvallis and the stores that we are shopping in, it would be wonderful if they could, for this time, find themselves identifying as belonging to Corvallis, belonging in Corvallis, and as such making steps to help Corvallis be a safe community. And that includes vaccines, and that includes proper mask wearing, and that includes distancing. It includes all of those things. So for any of us who are connected to the university, please let's use our positions there to encourage the university to promote a culture of belonging here. This is our community. It's the community of those, even if they're only going to be with us for 9 months. We want them to still be here in 9 months, and that's gonna require us to take some action. So yeah, and when it's safe and when it's necessary, I will get my third shot. But Sarah, I'm so glad you're getting yours. That's fantastic. And please don't get it early if you're not approved yet, because there are people who still need to be able to get there. So we don't have to get in lines any sooner than we need to either. So yeah, thanks everyone, and let's get vaccinated. If we're not, let's do it.
Thank you, Therese. Lou?
Yeah, I was listening and now I'm like, what was I gonna say? I know what it was. Okay. It's just, I think it's important too, because we interact with staff who interact with the staff of the kids in school. And so this is also showing our support of being present with you all as well. And I think that's an important part of this as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion or a motion?
Thanks for doing your part to keep us safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's the least, truly the least we can do. Lou, do you want to go for a motion?
I thought there was a motion on the floor.
Oh, yeah, well, it will be a secondary motion, which is in order, since it's pertinent to the main motion to approve the proclamation.
Oh, okay,
Um,
so.
And then after we vote on it, then, because a friendly amendment, I don't own the resolution, now it's on by the floor.
Yeah,
And if everybody accepts your amendments, then
I
we'll
see.
be,
That's what I was trying to do. That's why I was getting really confused. I was like trying to put it forth for us to say like, yeah, we all agree, isn't that how it works?
yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
right now is okay. yes.
Yeah, okay, so I wanted to move that we change the wording of number 6, is that what it was?
The sixth whereas.
6 whereas to read documented exemption as outlined through Oregon's vaccine exemption laws.
I second the motion.
There's a second. Kim, for the record, did we capture the wording?
She emailed it to me also.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing there's no second on the motion, I would assume that the Director Lohiwa Bear seeks a unanimous consent. So is there any objection on the motion? Seeing there is no objection, the motion, the amendment passes. Now, we do have the main motion of the proclamation with amended language that Lou provided us on the floor. So is there any further discussion on the proclamation as amended? All right, seeing none, we'll enter into a vote to approve the proclamation as amended. Vince, what's your vote?
Aye.
Sarah, what's your vote?
Aye.
Shauna, what's your vote?
Aye.
Therese, what's your vote?
Aye.
And Tina is excused. Lahui, what's your vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. On the same subject, I do have comments and direction that I would like to ask the board for their support. So this is not a formal action, but I believe it's very important, and I did not want to mention it until we committed ourselves for an important action to support our children and to stay and keep schools open. I would like to have the board support providing the superintendent with the direction to investigate and review the possibility to implement a COVID-19 vaccine requirements for all eligible students in Corvallis School District. So with that, we provide the superintendent the time to research and find a way where we can require students who attend school from ages 12 to 18 who are medically eligible to receive the vaccine to protect themselves, protect their families and their community, and of course, to keep our community safe and keep our schools open. It is very important at this time and where we are right now to make sure our students continue to attend school in person. So to make sure we are deliberate and provide the superintendent with the time to implement such a requirement and have a resolution or a policy update accordingly, I just want to ask for your support without really necessarily a vote, that we could provide this direction today so Ryan can come back to us in a later meeting for action. It's a very important one and an urgent one. With that, I would like to open it for a discussion or questions or comments from staff or the board. We have on docket Therese, and then Sarah, and then Lou, and then Sean, and then Vince. Therese?
Thanks. I just have a question. So right now, the vaccine is approved for 12 to 17-year-olds, and then of course 18 and above. And so we know that this mandate, were we to go this direction, would affect our middle schools and high schools. In the event that the vaccine is approved for 5 to 11, I'm not sure, maybe somebody can help me out with exactly where we are in the process of whether that's going to be full approval or not. But in the event that it is full approval, I assume that mandate would extend to the 5 to 11-year-old group as well. Yes, is that that would be the intention?
Yeah, that my intention is to research that possibility
Okay.
for all those who are medically eligible through the approval process from the CDC. We want to make sure that they're safe and we require them to do that. So with that, so really I kept it open in terms of the age group because of that particular delicate situation in terms of timeline and also the stages of emergency or full approval. These are details that I can't really speak to right now. I would like to have Ryan to
Yeah.
research it.
So I guess that's the crux of my question right there is, are we talking about a mandate that would only apply to those in an age group where it's fully approved by the FDA? We would not be talking about a mandate that would apply to conditional approval, right? It would be full approval. Or I guess that's my
So-
question.
Yes.
I think what I would need to find out is what that looks like in terms of both the legal and the practical aspect of that between the full approval and the emergency approval. And that's a piece that I would need to spend some more time researching.
Okay. Thank you. I absolutely support you taking time to research this. So I'm glad to know that we are having this discussion now with enough time to make an informed decision.
Thank you, Therese. Sarah and then Lou and then Shauna and then Vince. Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for recommending that our superintendent look into the possibility of doing this. I think we talked earlier again in our goal number 6 about all of the pieces that we have to put in place to keep our schools open as safely as possible, and the vaccines are a key piece of that. And I think if the more students in our schools that are vaccinated, I think the more ease our parents will feel about sending their children there, the more ease our staff and teachers will feel about being there. And the more likely it will be that we can keep kids in school as much as possible this year. So I think this is a really important thing to look into and find out what our ability is as a school district. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
One of the things that we've been running into is that Assistant Superintendent Harder has been so involved in doing contact tracing related to any COVID cases in the district. And one of the big markers is whether or not students have been vaccinated or not. And that impacts their ability to stay in school when there's an exposure. And so that decision would have an impact on students' ability going back to that being in school every day. And so I just want to add that to what I heard from you.
Yeah, I think in addition to looking at vaccine requirements, I think also looking at whether we can collect the information from families about whether their students are vaccinated, so that we're not having to find that information out when there's a possible exposure, but we already have that information so that it makes the tracing process that much easier. I think also would be helpful if we could find out if we could do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on this and thinking about how it's part of a longstanding process in combating pandemics and infectious diseases. It's not like this is unheard of in schools. And I think that that's important to look at it that way as well. And that there are the organ exemption laws as well that families already access for vaccines. And I think that as long as we're making sure that, I don't think anything that we would decide could ever supersede that. And so I wanted to make sure that that's clear to families and community members, and that that's part of your recommendations as well.
Yeah, through my initial review, my sort of initial look at this, I think that's an accurate statement.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shauna and then Vince. Shauna?
Great, thank you. And thank you for proposing this. I'm very much in favor of taking the time to really research and look into what it would take, what all the steps would be, what the barriers are so that those could be anticipated. A couple of things that came to mind for me were making sure as part of that exploration and researching process is looking into access? How would the school make sure that all students had access to those vaccines if required? And there certainly is a precedent for requiring specific vaccines, as that's been done for a long time. Access to information in families' home and native language from professionals that they trust. If there are families who are carrying fear or worry, or even come from communities who may have real concerns about past histories that have happened in our country in terms of medical distrust, or so thinking about that role. And also then thinking about, if a requirement were to come down, the timing of that, with if there were families that had real concerns or opted out of vaccination, of aligning that with ability to switch into the online program, for instance, per se, rather than being there in person, if that were a choice that a family was making. So just thinking about how all those pieces come together, I think would be an important part of this. And then underlying all of that is thinking about how could community engagement be brought into that process now, so that any perceived barriers by the community or specific members of the community could be surfaced now. And in order to think about how could those be addressed, prevented, or anticipated before a requirement was in place, so that things could go as smoothly as possible. So just a couple of thoughts that came to mind for me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those. One of the things that is actually happening tomorrow is Marcianne, Dr. Rivera Cucci is going to be bringing together a convening of community leaders, primarily community leaders for communities of color, to talk about what steps can be taken, what supports can be put into place. So again, continuing to try to think about how do we engage communities to get them that information that you were talking about. And then also to recognize that we do have a couple of upcoming clinics at our 2 high schools. So again, trying to make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for vaccine, as well as thinking about a number of different avenues to support students and families.
Thanks for sharing that, Ryan.
Vince?
So whenever you're going in the rotation, you get to echo what's already been said. And so my colleagues have really highlighted the things that were top of mind. I think, Shauna, you really spoke eloquently to the need of access to information. And I think that's going to be crucially important. One of the reasons, I mean, there's lots of reasons to support this. One that I think is really important. We know that vaccination is one of the most powerful tools we have to combat COVID-19. We know that we have families that are on the fence whether they're going to get vaccinated or not. I think that this may be an incentive. If my kiddo is going to get vaccinated, I'm going to learn about this, and I may myself as a parent get vaccinated. So I think there may be secondary effects, and I think this could have be a powerful move to get our vaccination rate much higher in our community and protect the community overall. So I look forward to learning more.
Thank you, Vince. So I hear from the board that the Corvallis School Board has the consensus to provide the superintendents with the direction to investigate and review the possibility to implement the COVID-19 vaccine requirements for all medically eligible students in Corvallis School District. With that, Ryan, do you have any questions for us or comments, or want to have the time to research this?
Yeah, I think that it's been helpful to hear you share some of your thinking behind this and some of the rationale and considerations that are really important when making a decision like this. So I feel like I have enough information to then go forward and do some additional research and get some additional guidance that I can then bring back to this board. So I feel like I have the information I need right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. With that, I just want to conclude, vaccines save lives, are saving lives, and will save lives, and will keep our students safe and in school. So it's really important. With that, we're moving to board member comments. Does any board member wish to make a comment or request a future agenda item? Therese. And then Sarah. Therese.
Thanks. First, I just wanted to say thank you to all of the teachers who are putting out effort, either have or will be putting out effort to host virtual curriculum nights. Man, it's like it's another Zoom meeting, and, 60 people in a room, a little breakout room, but so important. And so thank you so much for putting out that effort to do that. It's been really challenging for me as a parent to not have the opportunity to really be present in the classroom. Missed the entire fourth grade opportunity to volunteer, right? And so just that opportunity to be, even through a screen in the presence of my son's teachers and to hear the creative things they're planning and the ways they're trying to, do math leveling within their classrooms to keep kids moving forward based on where they are. It was just really encouraging to hear. And so definitely reaffirms my commitment that we must do everything we can to keep our kids doing in-person learning, even if that means people that we have to have virtual curriculum nights so that we can keep the distance that we need to have in order to make them happen. So just first, a big thank you to all the effort that has gone out to that. And then I was hoping to get just an update at some point in the near future about the impact that we of the distancing and such on how transportation's working for families. I know I live across the street from our school, so that is not anything we have to worry about. But I know that a lot of families, they are relying on transportation, and I'm just curious how that's working. If you're hearing from families, are they feeling okay and safe using it? I just don't know what it would be like to be relying on putting my child on a bus right now, and really putting them into a space where I'm sure hoping that the other families are taking the same level of precaution as we are. And so that could feel vulnerable. So just an opportunity to hear how that's working. And if there are bumps, how as a community can we help support ironing those out? And then the last thing I wanted to say is that my commitment as the fall is getting going and I'm all re-energized for my teaching load. I'm excited to be calling out excellence and alignment and places where I really appreciate the way something is delivered. And I want to do that here now to say that I really appreciate Shauna's response to the question about the vaccines, because I always feel with this group that we really do try to keep our community and our families at the center. But I don't think that we speak to it with the same eloquence as Shauna, you were able to express to families. I hope that families hear that and that we do what we can to encourage them to come back and reflect on it, because I think it was one of the more compassionate and inclusive ways to talk about the reasons that families may have hesitations and our responsibility to engage those and to do meaningful work for them to be heard and to respond. And so I'm appreciating your words, and I don't have anything to add to them. Just want to say I stand with those. But thank you for your thoughtfulness, because I think that probably landed in a very meaningful way for a lot of people in our community.
Thank you, Therese.
Good job, thank you. Sarah, and then Vince, and then Lou. Sarah?
Yeah, so this week we have the rollout of our screening testing, which I think was making families feel really good. It wasn't happening all the same way at every school. So, we're getting there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure more people are enrolling as they're hearing friends talk about it. But I just want to express my appreciation for making that happen for our school district. Also around testing, we're also, the emails are going out that your child has been in the classroom where there's been an exposure. And there just seems, I think parents are anxious about sending their kids to school. And there's just a lot of sort of anxiety around those communications and the timing of when that email comes out, what the window is, then if the testing needs to be done 3 to 5 days, how do you know when your child should be tested? So I just would like sort of more information, doesn't have to be a board agenda item or anything, but more information about how we're communicating to families about, close exposures or being in a classroom, because I think some of those communications are creating uncertainty for parents. And along those lines, I mentioned this to Ryan the other day in a conversation, but making sure that we're supporting families' ability to go get testing if they've had an exposure, because I did that with my child this weekend, and she's signing up for Lab Dash is not easy. It's all in English. Getting an appointment, getting yourself to the lab, all of those things just felt like it was a little if there were hurdles that I could easily overcome, but I felt like for some families, they may be much bigger hurdles. So just some information about how we're supporting families to make sure that all families have the ability to go get tested when they need to go get tested. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince, and then Lou, and then I'll recognize myself, Vince.
So just a few brief words of appreciation as well. First is for the Lincoln team, and not only for providing amazing education, and just was night and day. My kid going back to school and that great moment, and just seeing her excitement being back in school. But I really want to highlight their ability to adapt to a snarly, nasty traffic situation, and adapt and get parents in and parents out. And now, a week and a half later, they've got it pretty much figured out, and it's going really smoothly. It's facilities that when we planned that site, we didn't plan it for a pandemic and and so they were able to adapt and make things happen. They've been working really hard, and I just really appreciate the team at Lincoln, because that's the only school I get to see, unfortunately. My other appreciation is for our community and for this team. And when I say team, I'm talking about the board, I'm talking about our administrative team and our staff, because we're not in the news. No one's paying attention to Corvallis because we're not exciting. And there's a lot of school boards all over Oregon that are really exciting right now, and people are watching them for fun. Governance shouldn't be entertainment. It should be boring. And I think we're doing a really good job at that. We're doing hard work. You guys are working so hard, but you're doing what counts, and you're being diligent. And I just want to be really appreciative, and I'm really appreciative for our community for supporting our schools so much. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Vince.
Before we go on to Louis' comment, is it okay for Melissa just to share sort of the numbers about number of student families that have signed up and sort of?
Yeah,
Please do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know that you brought it up as a future board topic, but we have some of the
If you've got
information
information,
now.
we would love to have it.
Awesome. We currently have 664 students signed up for screening testing across the district, and we'll continue to push again next week with family messaging. And every communication that you were referring to, if there's been a positive student in your classroom, we add that information in there and make sure that we continue to push for screening. This week, we got screening results today, and not 664 students are signed up, but not all of them tested this first round. But of all those students that did test, no positives.
Yeah.
So that was really exciting. And as far as the split is concerned, there's probably about 400 plus students that are in elementary who are signed up for screening, and the balance are then in the secondary.
Can I ask a question? We have some cases, how many of them are secondary, how many of them are elementary, and how many of them we know are breakthrough?
So we have a dashboard on our website. So if you go to our website in COVID info, we have a dashboard there. This week we had 12 positive cases for staff and students in our district. And if you go there, you can see kind of the breakdown. And what I'm looking at is of the 12, 3, 4, 5, 6 were secondary and 6 were in elementary. So it just kind of depends. And a lot of times, these are sometimes families that are, have positives in their families at home. So it kind of spans multiple schools. And then you're asking about breakthrough.
Yeah.
So that one's a little bit harder because not everyone, gives up their vaccination status. We've seen a couple of our students and staff members who are old enough to be vaccinated, students who are old enough to be vaccinated, and staff members. We've seen some breakthrough cases, but it's not the vast majority.
Okay, the vast majority are unvaccinated, whether because they're not eligible or
Or
they're
they
not
just chose
vaccinated.
not to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Lou and then Therese.
I feel like some of my stuff is on here. One of mine was about the, oh wait, we're not asking questions, we're doing comments and.
Yeah, I threw us
I know,
off.
I was like, I'm so confused.
And then Sammy.
Thank
Sammy,
you.
no question.
Okay, I was like, where are we agenda? It's okay, just for
We're on board with the
disclaimer,
comments.
it's like it's the very first week of in-person at OSU since March 2020. That's where I work, so I'm a little bit, yeah. My comments were about just appreciation for all the staff, because I've also noticed such a positive experience so far. And when I drop my small child off, it's all happy people everywhere, dropping off their kids, except for when they're frustrated with traffic. But it said they really came up with a system really fast. And I've seen Erin out every Principal Hill out every day, every single day greeting people. And I think that says a lot about the way that leadership works in the district. And I'm sure that's the case at most of the schools, if not all of them. And I really appreciated that. I actually had tallied up the numbers already of cumulative cases. There's 11 elementary and 15 secondary for totals since school started. And I think that that's showing kind of the conversation that we led up to. And I think that having that information is helpful for parents to know about. And speaking of that, when I signed my kids up for the testing, the lab dash part registration totally threw the whole process off for me, because it's so long and you have to do it for a bunch of them. So I think I just wanted to reiterate the comment that Sarah said about having some help with that, because there's a lot of questions I was not expecting.
Okay.
And so even what kind of materials you might need to fill that out, because I was I gotta sit down and do that.
Okay.
Because I have too many kids to register. And the paper that got sent home from College Hill saying hey, you can sign your students up, reminded me to do it for all the kids. And so I think that was helpful too, having a paper. I'm sorry, always paper though for a lot of people probably, but hopefully folk will recycle it if they don't need it. But it was helpful to have that visual reminder in my hand as somebody that struggles a lot in life, like a lot of people do that have students in the district. So I just wanted to offer that as a suggestion of maybe helping get more.
That, and in addition to kind of more step-by-step how to get
Yeah.
through it, right?
Yeah.
It's not straightforward. It's
Okay.
when I was signing up my dependents, there was something that I had to go through with me, but if I left that question up for her, then it wouldn't process it. And
Okay.
it's not an easy,
Yeah.
I'm still not done with mine.
it's not easy.
That's okay. And then my other thing I did want to mention, because I know there's a lot of anxiety in the community about OSU going back to in-person with 20,000 plus students, plus all the faculty and staff that are coming back, that the vaccination rate on campus is really high. It's 94% for students and 96% for faculty and staff. And I think that says a lot about the desire of creating a healthy community as a whole across multiple components of our community that helps keep students in school as well. Not just in higher, but in K-12 too, because a lot of students are parents, faculty and staff are parents. And I think that that's a strong message from the campus community to the larger Corvallis community too. And I thought it'd be helpful for folks that are curious about those kind of things to know that.
Yeah, that's a really impressive number, far outpacing our county. So it's really exciting to hear, and it should create help people to feel safe and recognize that kids are back, college kids are back in school too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen tons of masks outdoors just walking. And so creating that norm too in town, I think is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Therese?
I forgot I wanted to give a shout out to a group of people that have been working really hard in our community for a long time, with actually very little turnover, but probably nobody ever thinks about them. And that's the Bond Oversight Committee. I get to attend their meetings as the board liaison, and I'm just always impressed. I'm the newest person to those meetings. Well, okay, technically the second newest, because we got a new member. So I have one meeting over the newest member. But it's been a very stable group for a long time. And I don't have everyone, I don't have the the list of everyone serving. So I won't go over names because I know I'll forget somebody and I don't want anyone to be left out. But I did just want to share gratitude for the work that they do. They spend a lot of time looking at numbers and looking at projections and implications of even the smallest changes and how it's going to align with the bond promises. They are very rigorous at making sure that the bond project is fulfilling the promises that were made to the voters. And I just have tremendous respect for their commitment. And it's a privilege to get to be there and participate with them. But I don't think anybody in the community could really appreciate the load that they carry if they don't get to sit in on one of those meetings. So it's a lot, folks. It's a lot. It's a lot of time, volunteer time and district time that has gone into making the bond project happen, and the bond oversight committee and the volunteers that are serving in that capacity. They're a big part of making this project happen on time and on budget and in alignment with the vision that we cast to the voters when we ask them to pass the bond. So I just we just had a meeting on Monday. And so, you know, I'm always appreciative, but I'm especially appreciative because Monday's meeting was just a really dynamic place that just demonstrated high commitment. So if they're listening, yay, thank you so much. And if they're not listening, but others are, if you come across them, give them a thank you, because they definitely deserve that. And then the last thing is that if I'm not mistaken, there's a new assistant professor among us at OSU. Is that right? And so I wanted to just give a little round of virtual applause because Dr. White Bear is now a assistant professor. And so congratulations, and say OSU is brilliant, not just for graduating a great scholar, but then for being smart enough to hold on to her and invite her to stay and continue to educate our community. And so it's so well deserved for the role that you have in the community and the leadership you've already brought. And so onward to tenure, and congratulations.
Thank you, Therese.
Congratulations, Lou.
Thank you.
Awesome. Team, I want to share with you some really great news I heard of earlier this afternoon, and I know Kelly and Ryan received it as well. Corvallis School District will be one of 3 or 4 Oregon school districts to be featured in OSBA's 2021-22 Promise campaign, the Promise of Oregon. This campaign is used to demonstrate how public schools and students are succeeding despite the pandemic. OSBA communications team will visit our district and work with Ryan and Kelly and the rest of the staff to later this fall to capture and feature the success of our students on video and in photos. Earlier, a couple of weeks ago, I nominated our district, and in my nomination, I mentioned that Corvallis School District is a flagship example of the promise of a resilient Oregon and its schools. So I'm really glad seeing that I believe I'm the only one without children, I'm the only one who's not parents. And I know parents like to brag about their kids. So this is my contribution, given that I see all Corvallis School Districts like my kids. I want to brag about them, and I want the whole Oregon to know about them. I feel that's the least we can do to celebrate our students and the accomplishments of our staff to help our students succeed. And I hope someone somewhere will look into those videos or pictures and say, Corvallis could be my home, and we can get our kids to move to Corvallis. It's a good place to be in. So I'm really proud of this recognition and look forward to see this coverage in the near future. And thank you for staff for being willing to work on this. With that, any further comments?
I just want to say that's really amazing, Sammy, because a lot of times the experience of being educated and learning during a pandemic is so framed from a deficit. And it's really amazing to see this district highlighted in such a positive way. Yeah, thanks for doing that.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it. Thank you. Any further comments? All right, seeing none, look at us, 8:35. Seeing there's no further business, we are adjourned.